No fault in your sacrifice or your offerings of bulls and goats. Now offer me instead your thanksgiving and keep the vows that
Well, hello. How are you? I trust everybody can hear me and blah, 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 blah. My name's Alan Aguirre. Welcome to the Chameleon Church Monday night gathering. We are in a session regarding this thing is spiritual. We're going through it weekly, and we are in session 3B, the Power of Discernment, scriptural guidelines for worship, the spirit piece, and that's what we're going through right now. So that's fun, right? It's a lot of fun. So we're going to go through this little intro that we do. If you're new, welcome. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for coming. If you're a regular, if you're an OG, thanks for coming back. This is where you can get our resources. We have books and calendars and things of that nature. What else? Here's our email address. Blah, blah, blah. Email address. Tuesday morning, 8:45 a.m. Central. We have what we call the Chameleon Church Show, where we talk about, all sorts of things. And right now you're watching the Chameleon Church Monday night gathering. It's a Bible study of sorts. It's an interactive type of thingamajigger. Yeah, thingamajigger. When was the last time you heard that? Like I said, my name's Alan Aguirre. Thank you for joining us. All right. Session 3B, the Power of Discernment, scriptural guidelines for worship. And we're in the spirit aspect. Father, I ask that your Holy Spirit would do its thing. That you would open up hearts and minds. Yeah. Good stuff. All right. If there isn't anything that we need to do or whatever, we'll just start. All right, here's our premise. And this is my prayer, for this particular session, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight. Another word there is discernment, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God. Right? That's pretty straightforward, I'm thinking. I like the idea that discernment is needed so you can discern what is best and may be pure and blameless. Without discernment, you're not going to necessarily be able to discern what is best, let alone purity and being blameless for the day of Messiah. It's an important attribute that we talk about a lot around here, and we're pretty much trying to break it down through these sessions. All right, the dimensional realm of practicality. That's what we're calling this little piece. You see, because the majority of our day-to-day mundaneness is lived out in the dimensional realm of practicality, we, because we're humans and because we default to our humanity, walk in our practical reasoning. We lean on our own understanding. We don't live in or by the Spirit for the most part, so our processes are carnal. We process our reality in and with our carnal minds and understanding. I have X amount of money in my bank account, and I have this much to pay in taxes or in bills. There are so many ways this can manifest in our life. And it really does depend on who we are, what we've been doing in our life up to this point, because I think a lot of the spiritual attack or a lot of the challenges that we face, even though they're across the board pretty much the same, right? I think they have differencing elements, obviously, and pieces to it, because it's tailored to who we are, right? I mean, if ABC is going to chop me at the knees, but it might not chop you down to the knees, the devil's not going to necessarily go at you with ABC. He's going to go after you with DEF, and vice versa. So even though all these type of challenges are common to everyone, this is it's kind of tailored. It's kind of tailored to to who we are, our personalities, our reference experience, our life experience. My background is really bright. Anyway, sorry. I'm looking around. We lack the tangible revelation that everything in life is played out in the spiritual realm, and that this physical realm is only the cause and effect of that spiritual reality. Our physical is a manifestation of the spiritual, period. This is the case regardless if we believe, agree, or understand this. We have been convinced that we are humans attempting to have a spiritual experience. No, we are spirit beings having a human experience. Much in the same way that the supernatural is still natural, it's just super. That's what Sid Roth says all the time. This changes everything once we grasp it, understand it, and walk in it. It should alter our paradigm. Now, everything Jesus said and did speaks to this reality that we are spirits having a human experience. The teachings of the New Testament address this and instruct us to walk, live in the Spirit, in order for us not to carry out the desires, the results of the flesh, carnality, our humanness. Spirituality and carnality are in complete opposition with one another. And this exercise, the processing of our lives through and in the realm of practical reasoning, the carnal, Jesus called demonic. And we see that here. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "Far be it from you, Lord, this shall never happen to you." But he turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me. For you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." That's the version we see in Matthew. Mark puts it like this: "And he, Jesus, began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again." And he said this plainly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. I like this part. But turning and seeing his disciples, Jesus, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." I like the fact that he turns and looks at and sees the disciples there, because this is going to be a great object lesson for all of them. So, even though it was a very practical, reasonable, and rational thing for Peter to react and say what he said about the coming death of Messiah, but it wasn't said based on the spiritual, and that made it unacceptable. Spiritual in the sense of God. I'm sure he was speaking spiritually, but you know what I mean? Peter wasn't thinking with God's thoughts. He was thinking with man's thoughts, the practical reasoning. He was thinking carnally. He wasn't processing in the Spirit. He was processing with his practical reasoning, and it lacked spiritual discernment. The revelation of being spirit beings that are having a human experience was understood by Jesus and in turn taught to his disciples. The red letters attest to this, and so do the epistles. This man of God in 1 Kings 13 that we were reading about, this man, as we already determined, was functioning at a high level of discernment and spirituality. He prophesied by name King Josiah 300 years into the future. The continued discernment of this man of God was going to be crucial within the mundaneness of sitting under an oak tree and meeting the old local prophet. And this is what he was told: "You shall neither eat," I'm not supposed to go there. "Bread nor drink water there, nor return by the way that you came." This is what this man of God was told. That was the last thing God told the man of God to do. He was now being told that an angel had instructed the old local prophet to bring him back to his house so that he could eat and drink. A direct contradiction of what God had told him. He was being lied to. Here we go. So he, the man of God, went back with him, the old local prophet, and ate bread in his house and drank water. And as they sat at the table, the word of the Lord came to the prophet, the old man who had brought him back. And he cried to the man of God who came from Judah, "Thus says the Lord, because you have disobeyed the word of the Lord and have not kept the command that the Lord your God commanded you, but have come back and have eaten bread and drunk water in the place of which he said to you, 'Eat no bread and drink no water,' your body shall not come to the tomb of your fathers." Man, I'm pretty sure, I don't know. I don't know if this is prophetic or not, but they're sitting there eating. It's a very, they're giving the guy probably some room, some space, because he just got finished doing this crazy awesome thing. He's sitting there eating some bread, drinking some water, and then all of a sudden the Holy Spirit zaps the old prophet, and I'm pretty sure he stood up like urgently, like whoa, it scared everybody. But not only did he stood up and the chair went flying behind him because of his legs, and then he just went, wow. I can understand how this account might trouble and confuse many of us. I struggled with this whole 1 Kings 13. I struggled to understand just what was going on here with this man of God, the old local prophet, how he lied to him, and then he rebukes him, and he's going to go die, and I think I struggled with it for quite a while, years, to really get a good handle on it, an understanding of it, and I believe I did, which is why I would bring it up in this book. I can understand how this account might trouble and confuse many of us. How, why, would a prophet lie to another prophet? How, why, would the old prophet lie to the man of God and deceive him into coming to his home after being told of the plain instruction of not to eat or drink in Bethel, right? The man of God literally told the old prophet when he was invited to come over, "I can't. I was told not to eat or drink here and to go home by a different way. That's what I'm in the process of doing." And then the old man said, "Oh, well, I too am a prophet. And an angel visited me and told me to come and get you to come to my house." He lied to him to do what he had been told by the man of God he was instructed not to do. I mean, I think he was jealous. I think he was pissed off that this other guy shows up out of nowhere to do something in his town, on his turf. I mean, this was the old local prophet. Why wasn't he called to do this? Well, because he was probably already compromised enough to lie. I mean, if you're walking in integrity, you're not going to lie. If you're compromised, you're going to lie. How, why, would a man of God who, after clearly completing a marvelous work of God, disobey God's direct instruction? How could the old prophet prophesy correctly to the man of God after lying to and deceiving him? And how is any of this okay with God? Is it possible that this account confuses and troubles us because we're attempting to understand it, wrap our minds around it with our practical understanding, our reasoning in the flesh? Or, right, I mean, Peter's telling Jesus, "No, we're not going to let you go to Jerusalem and die. Get behind me, Satan." He calls it demonic. You're not thinking with God's thoughts. You're not processing in the spiritual sense of what it is that I have to do. You're functioning in the flesh, and he calls that carnal. He calls that demonic. Are we reading this account and trying to understand it in the spirit or with our flesh? With our practical reasoning, none of this makes much sense. But spiritually, we see an old man lie regardless of his position of prophet. Just because you're a prophet doesn't mean you can't lie. He is still capable and able to lie. And since he is a prophet and his gift goes before him, and God doesn't repent of his gifts, the old local prophet can also prophesy correctly to the man of God in spite of the previous deception. Remember the teaching of Paul, the spirit of the prophet is for the prophets. Only a prophet can test another prophet and rebuke another prophet or correct another prophet. Regardless of the lie, it was still for the man of God to obey nonetheless. It doesn't matter if the heavens opened. It doesn't matter. What we're going to find out later as we continue in these studies is it clearly states that God would send a high-level prophetic person functioning in signs and wonders and to try to convince you not to keep Torah, to test you to see whether or not you're going to obey or not, or if you're going to be seduced by the guy's, words and acts of supernatural signs and wonders. Yeah. God does this. So regardless of the lie, regardless of the old prophet, regardless of whatever happened, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. An angel of light, even if the old man didn't lie and an angel did show up, the last thing God told him to do was not to do what he's being told it's okay for him to do. It was still on the man of God to obey. Spiritually, we see the man of God declare prophecies and do marvelous exploits in the Spirit. We also see this man believing a lie that will result in disobedience and death. I don't know if you know that, but that's where this story is literally going. And that's the key here. Irrespective of what happened or how it happened, the man of God was disobedient. And we need to truly understand this. The man of God disobeys. To obey is better than sacrifice. Obedience trumps everything. I don't care how much money you throw at it. I don't care how much spiritual acts of supernatural powers. It doesn't matter. Obedience trumps all of that. And the man of God disobeyed. But in order to understand this, we have to take a hard look at ourselves, and therein lies the problem. Okay, this is, of sound mind and spirit. In order for our worship of God to be in complete and absolute truth, obedience has to drive. No, obedience has to fuel that pursuit of truth always. Furthermore, that drive must not only be in spirit, but that spirit relationship must absolutely be honed by the maturity of our gifts of discernment. Gifts that are trained by our constant practice in order to distinguish good from evil. As our example, spiritual discernment was required of the man of God to determine the lie, the good or evil, in the words of the older prophet. Now, I'm going to attempt to bring this into a modern real-world scenario. I can't tell you how often I have seen what I'm going to try and break down here. I use the words maturity and spiritual as the foundations that fuel our obedient pursuit of truthful worship because of the amount of spiritual immaturity that is disguised as spirituality. Spiritual immaturity, be it the counterfeit of true godly spiritual manifestations or the lack of discernment regarding true godly spiritual manifestations, are largely behind the majority of the reasons so many disregard and oppose charismatica pertaining to spiritual God-given gifts, the spiritual gifts today. I can't tell you how often I am challenged over my position on spiritual gifts. And a lot of times it looks like this. Well, I used to go to a charismatic church. I used to go to a Pentecostal church. I used to go to a spirit-filled church. Okay. That literally has no bearing on any reality. just because an individual comes up to me to tell me their experience, their story, their testimony of being in a spiritual church. You got to remember, these are people that oppose my position on the matter. These are people that are not for the spiritual gifts. They're not for prophecy or speaking in tongues. They don't prophesy. They don't speak in tongues. They're not for the laying on of hands for the healing of the sick or for the casting out of unclean spirits or demons. They don't do that. They're not for it. And they're going to sit here and tell me why they don't believe it, why they don't do it, why it's a sham, why it doesn't exist, why it's not legit, why I'm not legit. And it's all going to be based on their experience, their reference experience. Now, here's why I say that doesn't count. Here's why I say I don't care. That's like the last, there's no way you're going to be able to convince me of anything that way. And here's why. I don't know if the church that he's regarding or referring to, the church that he went to, the church that they grew up in, and I'm literally thinking of somebody that came at me a few years ago publicly from another Torah-based organization, and it was ugly. And I had to, anyway. It doesn't matter because, okay, Angie. Oh, man, I love you, Angie. And here's why it doesn't matter. Because I have no idea whether the church that he went to was legit or not. For all I know, there were a bunch of snake-handling freaks. I don't know. Or maybe this church was completely, absolutely legit, and this guy wasn't. Right? I mean, I remember being told once by a couple. I didn't want to hang out with this couple. This particular couple gave me the EBGBs. This is back in Dallas. And they had a massive chip on their shoulder against their church. And it was because their church had come against them and warned them about their relationship before they were married, because they were in sexual immorality and all that stuff. And so they were really embittered. They were really angry. They had made this major monument to regarding how the church had handled them and their relationship and their premarital sex and blah 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 blah. Right. So it was a big offense, and because of that, from that time they decided not to literally get out. They disengaged from church. They weren't involved with church, and their lives, their spiritual lives, their Christianity was basically non-existent. And so I asked them, well, was the church right? Well, what do you mean? Were you guys fornicating? Well, yeah, but because they had been fornicating and they ended up getting pregnant out of wedlock and blah, 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 blah. But God forbid that anybody should frickin' talk to us about it and reprimand us. And what's the word? Castigar. That's a Spanish word. See, sometimes I don't know. It's weird. Rebuke. God forbid the church does its job. Because see, these people were going to bitch and complain whether the church did their job or didn't do their job. Do you see what I'm saying? It was a no-win situation. They want to be rebellious. They want to be disobedient, and they're going to be disobedient. It doesn't matter. See, that's what we need to understand. That's what we need to understand how this plays out for a lot of people. They don't care. They're right. So I don't know if this guy's church was legit. I don't know if this guy's. Well, I know for a fact this guy wasn't legit. But was his position against charismatic and the spiritual gifts based on a bad church experience, or he's just rebellious? See what I'm saying? See, I don't know. So if you tell me that your reason for being anti-charismatic, anti-anything, anti-God, anti-charismatic, anti-Christian, anti-Torah, if you tell me that your position that contradicts mine and you're opposing my position and is based on your experience, you don't understand how this thing works. For example, Judas Iscariot. Let's say he didn't kill himself. He throws the bag of 30 pieces of silver. Wasn't it 30 pieces of silver? He throws it back to the Pharisees, and he doesn't kill himself. What was his version going to be? See what I'm saying? See, we already know that one, he handled the money. Two, it says in the Gospels, he handled the money and he was already embittered. The guy was already getting bitter about crap. And was probably skimming off the top. I mean, there's references to that potentiality in the Gospels. So let's say he hadn't hung himself and he had lived. What would have been his version of the story? What would the Gospel of Judas of Iscariot look like? What point of view? What position based on his reference experience? What would his epistle been like? See what I'm saying? We have to be incredibly careful. Because I can sit here all day long and tell you horrific story after story after story after story on how bad the church is, how much the church has screwed me, how much pastors have come at me, how I could sit here all day long and tell you story. I got 40 years of really, really bad Christian stories of how much the church has failed me. But why would I do that? What's the point? I only bring that up because if when it's necessary. Because, right? We don't just complain around here. We bring the answer. It doesn't matter. I expect for man to fail me. It doesn't matter how much the church has failed me, how much the church has failed people I know, how much religion, theology, doctrine, denomination, none of that. The American westernized Roman church. I can sit here and I can trump all of you combined with my stories on how bad it's been, simply not because I'm special, no, but because of the work I've done. Here's why that's not important. Because regardless of all of that, I know that this is absolutely 1,000% true, that God is faithful, that Jesus is faithful, that the Holy Spirit is faithful, that the Word is true, and then if you do the Word, it'll come to pass in your life. Regardless of what man does or says, regardless of denominations, regardless of your church experience. I mean, that's why I use the analogy. Have you ever heard a bad song on the radio? Yes. Did you decide not to listen to music ever again because of it? Well, no, that would be absolutely ridiculous. That's my point. It is ludicrously crass of you to walk away from Jesus, salvation, the Holy Spirit, the charismatica, whatever. It's crass of you to walk away from that because you had a bad experience or because somebody hurt you. Oh, I've been hurt. I don't have time for that. Nobody has time for that. You know what? God says, enough, grow up, start adulting, #adulting in Him. All right, here's an example of what I'm talking about. Person A will represent the alleged believer with spiritual gifts, while person B will represent the believer desiring a touch from the Spirit through a spiritual gift. Person A lacks the training, the discipleship, and the experience that can only come with time in, let's say, the giving of prophetic words or spiritual healing, but is convinced that they, person A, are highly proficient in these areas. Right? Like all these Muppets that try to convince me I'm wrong for charismatica, right? For gifts, for Pentecostalism, for the gifts of the Spirit because of their bad experience. Well, I guarantee you they're not proficient in any of them simply because of who and what they are and what they've become. At the same time, person B lacks the training, the discipleship, and the experience that can only come with time in, let's say, the discernment of whether or not person A is actually capable in functioning in these areas. As a result, Both parties are now positioned to cause some serious, unsound damage to each other and themselves. And this happens all stinking day long. What is it called? Parking lot prophecies? There's a term for that. It's like you have no business laying hands and praying for people, and you're an idiot for just letting anybody lay hands on you and praying for you. So you got two bozos trying to be spiritual together. Oh my gosh. The scenario now creates the situation for either person A or person B to use this experience as the example of how their form of belief in the spiritual gifts ended up being untrue, a farce, and or a counterfeit lie, when in reality it was a perfectly explainable case of spiritual immaturity by both parties. The majority of the reasons why charismatica is discredited by disgruntled believers result from this type of spiritual immaturity and good old emotional gullibility. The actions of both parties were spiritually unsound. Unsound because of their lack of authenticity and maturity. Spiritual maturity can only be gained by the training and constant practice mentioned in Hebrews 5:11 through 14, like we've already looked at. The level of obedience of both person A and person B would more than likely be lacking in their relationship with their spiritual authority. We are, of course, assuming that both parties are under spiritual authority, obedience, and that said spiritual authority are themselves under spiritual authority, obedience. That's why when Paul gives, oh no, you're fine, Angie. That's why when Paul gives his pedigree, he's basically saying, look, I'm not some jerk, some schmuck off the street. I've been around. And in the same way, I tell people, my voice has been vetted for 40 years, 35, 40 years. I'm not just some new guy going, hey, check this out. If persons A and B, remember in the old days, you had to write columns in newspapers before you were given an actual story. You had to be vetted. Your voice had to be vetted. Okay. If persons A and B were indeed under legitimate and mature spiritual authority, that authority would discern and instruct person A not to give prophetic words, to shut the heck up, or offer spiritual healing because of their immaturity and lack of experience. This is not for you to do. And you have to tell people that knowing they're probably going to leave. We've had people leave Chameleon Church publicly because I've told them, hey, what are you doing? And they don't like that, so they leave. Right? You have to tell them. Let me repeat that. If persons A and B were indeed under legitimate and mature spiritual authority, right, then that authority would discern and instruct person A not to give prophetic words or offer spiritual healing because of their immaturity and lack of experience. Person A needs to submit, obey to the instruction from their leadership and continue their training. Person B would, in like manner, be instructed to guard themselves from allowing just anyone to speak into their lives. I don't let anyone speak into my life. I don't let just anybody speak into my life. I don't let just anyone lay hands on me. Are you crazy? I don't let just anyone give me a prophetic word. There's no way. Oh my gosh, that reminds me of something. So there was this guy that I knew. He believed that there was only one apostle per city, and he was it. Anyway, so he left the church we were all going to at the time and started doing these little sessions, these little gatherings. And so he had a gathering and invited us, so we went. And when we showed up, it was basically one of those, I don't know, what do you call it? Basically the whole room is watching two people who are supposed to be functioning as prophets, and then you would sit in the hot seat and they would prophesy over you. So this is what this meeting was about. I don't know. Anyway, and so after we were there my wife and I were there for about 20 or 30 minutes, I can't believe I'm going to show this. They asked, would you like to come up and get a word? There's no way, right? But I'm like, all right, I'll play along. So we both sat down, my wife and I, and you should probably know my wife and I are pretty good at, this is what we do. This is what we do. But you know what? If you're going to legitimately prophesy over me, awesome, right? Okay, so we sit down and we're waiting for our word, and they've got nothing. They're like, they've got nothing. Because right? They've got nothing. And so we started prophesying on them. And I called this one guy out for sexual immorality, pornography, blah, blah. Anyway, yeah, it was... Whoosh. Person B needs to obey to the instruction from their leadership and not allow themselves to be so emotionally driven. Now, I brought that up simply because I don't just let anybody lay hands on me and pray for me. I don't just let anybody prophesy over me. I don't just let anybody speak into my life. No. That's silly. Okay. I fully understand that many persons A and B are not under any spiritual authority, which is why they're all messed up. And right, and then when they get confronted they leave that church and they talk crap about that church. Ooh, I just censored myself. Did you catch that? They're probably not under any spiritual authority or are in fact under immature and disobedient leadership. It's so many times it's both. So it's worse when it's together at the same time. I also understand that not every spiritual authority is legitimate, mature, or obedient themselves, which only strengthens my position that discernment is crucial to our spiritual well-being. Therefore, in order for our worship of God to be in complete and absolute truth, obedience has to fuel our pursuit of truth. Furthermore, that drive must be in the Spirit, and that Spirit relationship must absolutely be honed, trained, shaped, formed, right? What's that? When you put something in the fire, what am I thinking of? It's like an old medieval concept of forged. Must be honed, forged by the spiritual maturity of our powers of discernment. Powers that are trained by our constant practice in order to distinguish good from evil. This training is received from mature and sound biblical discipleship. That mature and sound biblical discipleship must come from mature and sound biblical trainers. Those trainers must model sound spirituality that encourages authentic and constant practice. Be right back. Lots of stuff. So, what y'all thinking? Oh, that's my Texan. It's about as Texan as I can get. What y'all thinking?
It's Monday.
Oh, there's no Doug here to break the ice. Oh, man. Well, someone's going to have to play Doug and break the ice. that was a weak Doug.
That was Ian's lame impression.
Oh,
Did you
I just heard a.
Oh, maybe my connection wasn't good.
It was a good impression.
Oh, no, it wasn't.
I can hear you now, but all I heard was like.
You want to try again? You get one more chance.
Hey.
Oh my gosh. So, how's everybody doing? Everyone doing all right? Did I scare you with that devotion, with that session? It's not a devotional. And it's serious stuff. I can never thank those that raise me in the Lord. I have lots of opportunities to, and I do constantly, because it's like, I know that what I experience as a young believer, as a new believer, where I was, the type of church I was with, how they functioned, what they imparted in me. I mean, I found out real quick after coming to the States that I had been involved with something that wasn't the norm. It was biblical and scriptural, but just not the norm when it came to Christianity. And I still have relationship with a lot of these elders, a lot of the pastors that I had when I was, 16. When I got saved right before I turned 16. And I constantly, any chance I have, any opportunity I have to honor them, I do, because I mean, they had the wherewithal, right? I mean, they were from the Jesus movement, so that's our first clue. They read the Bible and did it, versus they read the Bible and came up with a list of reasons why that wasn't applicable, why we couldn't do it, why it shouldn't be done, So I know that my background is not normal, and I'm so grateful for it. I tried explaining this in an interview once. I was talking with Brian Head Welch. I was interviewing, actually, Brian Head Welch from Korn. And we were talking about dead religion. It's like we were talking about how people like us, we had exciting, vibrant, as godless as they were and as sinful as they were. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that we had these exciting, vibrant, lives before coming to Jesus. Imagine, dead religion would literally would never have been able to captivate us. Why would we go from exciting, envelope pushing lives in the flesh to dead religion? It's like, yeah, if your God can't trump this, why bother? But see, that's just because dead religion, the misrepresentation of God, and Christianity, there's more of that than there is, come, follow me. I'll make you fishers of men. Come, follow me. You'll never thirst again. Come, follow me. You think this is special? You think casting out demons, you think that demons obeying you is special? Right? How many churches will even say that? They can't say that because they don't know that. Right? You think that that demons cowering before you, demons cowering at your name, demons obeying you is something special? You know what's more special than that? See, they can't even say that. Having your names written in the book, God's book of life. Right? This has to trump life in the physical realm. Otherwise, not so much. That's a good point. Nathalie makes a good point, and it's you know, and you have to obey your elders. You know, here let me. This is what Nathalie said, so all of you can see it. I've spent years obeying man because I respect my elders. They are trained. That better you do that than because of the fear of man. They are trained and educated in this, and I'm not. Blah blah blah. Right on down the road of deception, and it's a balance of obeying men. Because they've gone before you, because they're your elders, versus, you know, I mean, Paul, remember, he got slapped because he spoke rudely to the high priest. He didn't know, and he said, I apologize. I didn't know it was the high priest. Had I known, I obviously wouldn't have spoken like that towards them, right? Jesus said, they are hypocrites. They are whitewashed tombs. They are vipers. These guys are demonic, but don't do what they do. But you better obey them. You have to obey them because they sit on Moses' seat. See what I'm saying? There's that balance there. Yeah, good point. All right, this is called gallery mode. If you're new, Aspen recoined the phrase family mode. This is when I shut up and you talk. It's true. I can totally. So Nathalie says this, and I understand that this is a great point. I don't think I actually thought of this. I can totally get how one prophet would trust another prophet, especially when he's the older prophet. That's a great point.
Can you hear me, Alan?
I can.
Okay. All right. So the last paragraph you had was, this training is received for mature and sound biblical discipleship. That mature and sound biblical discipleship must come from mature and sound biblical trainers. So, you know, I live in Spokane, and do you have, it's kind of been, how do you submit to that when you kind of feel like there's a bit of dryness? You know, the well's dried up around here. I mean, it's difficult because then you end up searching from place to place. And so what do you recommend?
First of all, love your last name. That's supposed to be my middle name. That's supposed to be actually my surname. And I'm a proud owner of the County Cavan Tartan. That is where Riley comes from.
Ah, nice. Yeah.
I'm full of so much crap. Yeah. Alyssa, did you hear what the question was?
I was changing a diaper. Sorry, this one is very loud today.
She's asking, she's in Spokane, where do I get this type of mature and sound biblical discipleship? So I'm asking you because it's easier. See, I think it's more impacting if she tells you what I'm about to tell you because it's coming from her, not me. Does that make sense?
Maybe. Run it past me.
It's one thing if I have all the answers, but it's better if I can, if others have it as well, because then that just means it's not just me. That's what I mean.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
Over the loud mouth. Yeah, well, Jerry, if you are in Spokane, we know a community there. Do they still go under the name Gateways, Alan? Or
I think so, to an extent, yeah.
Okay. So I can, if you email me or email the feedback email, I can help get you connected there. But was the question, Alan, just in like a general purpose, was the question more about how do you go about finding that? Or
how
is
do
that...
you find it? Yeah. And so if we have an actual, if we have an actual resource they can physically go to in Spokane, we do know of one.
Right. Yes, we do.
And for those of you wondering what we're talking about, if you've heard me talk about the school in Cyprus, the Cyprus School of Gateways Beyond International, they are now, they're still doing a Cyprus thing, but not like they used to. And they have, they've basically have relocated a lot of them to Spokane, the same family, the same group. So they're in Spokane.
Okay.
They have a church you can go to, and they have fellowship. They have all that stuff. And Alyssa can get you that information.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Because that's what I've been feeling, hearing, that discernment, and I felt like I didn't have good discernment, and I want discernment in so many levels. It's like, you're right. It is so critical. And I've always felt like in my normal life and growing up, I was gullible because I didn't believe people would lie to me, because I don't lie to them. And so to have that discernment just also in this realm, but spiritually too, and to walk into a room and have that discernment, that level of discernment, something I've really desired in these last years, and especially these last months. So
my daughter just popped up and said it's called The Gate.
Okay.
Nehemiah Rudolph, who we know and love, the Rudolph family. He's, I guess, the one running it. His sister is married to one of the pastors at Bethel Austin, if you're in the Austin, Texas area. She's also singing on the first song of our Ministries Walking 1518 album. So we're very much involved with these people. Thank you, Saf. My daughter's joining us. Look at that. What a trip.
Okay.
Great question, man. I love it when you say, I'm from this city and we have a resource we can recommend.
Oh yeah, because I thought I was out here in the desert. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Well, I'm guessing that's probably not true for Central Ohio, but we do have this group. And, this is part of why we were led to, pull out all the stops, and we're going to drive cross country in 2 days at the end of May.
Oh my gosh.
To get from Columbus, Ohio to Utah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I mean, that's part of why we're coming. I started coming to this group because Leanne was, she was involved in the last group and just talked about it a lot. And I started reading more, and she shared the Facebook with me and such. And she told me this one was started up. So I started in, and, for better or worse, you're stuck with me now. And this is not the first time I felt like a quickening or a draw in the past as well. And maybe that's a story over a beer in the end of May or something.
We can do that. Right, Kendall?
But
that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, yeah, we want to learn that too. I'm hoping that we'll at least begin some equipping, when we come out to see y'all. I'm not even from the South, and I said y'all. At the end of May, I don't know that I have a point to what I'm saying. I turned on my camera. I thought, I better say something.
Yeah, no, you don't need one. I think it's great that you're introducing yourself like this to everyone. Now, have you guys ever done a road trip like that before?
Florida.
Oh, we've done road trips. I personally like driving. We've driven to and from Florida a couple of times, but awesome. I mean, that's like 17, 18 hours. That's not 26 hours. So,
right.
And so it'll be interesting, but we'll be fine. We'll get there. It's all good.
Yeah, you're probably going to want to take the I don't know what route you're taking, but I don't know if you're going to go to Denver or you're going to go the Wyoming route.
I think it takes us the Wyoming route. It's short.
It's a little shorter, yeah. It's ugly as all get out. I mean, it is like ugly. Crossing southern Wyoming. But if you go through Denver and then the 70 through the mountains, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And then take the 6 from the 70 up to the 15. That's great drive.
Okay.
Or you can take the ugly Wyoming route.
So I was in Colorado Springs College for a bit, and we made it up to Cheyenne a couple times.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
But that was
you only went to Cheyenne though.
What's that?
You only went to Cheyenne?
Went there, but also ended up driving up to Yellowstone and such. But
that's
really
pretty.
Long time ago.
That's pretty. West of Cheyenne is when it starts getting ugly.
I don't think we're in Wyoming very long. It's like we just kind of cut that corner of it.
You're taking it all the way
Oh no,
to
we do
Evanston.
go all the way across. No.
Yeah, it's all the way across. It's ugly.
Oh, yeah.
But it'll be great to meet you. And yes, Kendall and I, yep, see, Kendall says, oh, yeah, we'll be happy to have a beer with you.
Cool. That works.
We only
Looking
drink
forward
one,
to
though.
it. Of course.
That's awesome,
Well,
man. We're excited to have you guys.
Magic Answer has only had a couple, so.
Cynthia's saying she might not make it. That she doesn't look like she's coming. How are we gonna do this without Cynthia? Right, everybody? Do I have a whoa? No, I don't. I don't have a sound effect for that. We'll miss ya. All right, who else?
It's Monday.
It's Monday. You guys are up. Any questions? Any testimonies? Any thoughts? Any concerns about what we talked about? Hey, if you guys aren't coming because of the deadline, we'll push the deadline. If it's only because of the deadline, we'll push the deadline. We'll convince the hotel to honor that rate. Get a hold of Safrain at chameleonchurch.com or Alyssa at feedback@e2iseries.com and let them know whatever it is if that's what you're saying. Deadlines are just to try and to keep things manageable. I'm all about breaking deadlines. I'm all about breaking the rules. Sorry.
It's Monday.
Anybody else have anything to share?
There's so much in this. It's so deep. You know, it's so crucial to our spiritual well-being. In order for us to worship in truth, in spirit and in truth, we have to have that obedience. It's just so much. I am just a little slow today. But I think that I think that the whole part about the motivation for the old prophet, you know, jealousy, angry, well, he's moving in very human terms as opposed to, you know, well, just because some guy has a title that says prophet on him doesn't mean he's never going to sin or screw up or be selfish or, you know. So I'm not struggling over that anymore because I realize that that's true of all of us. We all are capable of sin, and but I would be so concerned and afraid if I were listening and hearing from God, and then all of a sudden I stab some other person in the back. That's not going to go well. So, yeah, there's just a lot here, Alan.
What's that?
There's just a lot here.
Yeah. You're going to tell me what God told you to do, and then I'm going to tell you that God changed his mind and it's going to get you killed. I mean,
yeah.
It's not like the old prophet didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't because he was naive at all. No. He was definitely moving in his humanness, and he certainly wasn't obeying God. He was just moving in his own man-made thoughts. So,
and then
it's kind of what
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it's kind of what I was thinking last week. You know, the last thing that God tells you to do is what you got to do. Yeah.
There is a protocol to all this, right? We've talked about the protocol, the rules of engagement.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's why we repeat them all the time. We're constantly repeating ourselves, aren't we?
Well, we have to, because you know how quickly we forget. I mean, hey, we are so bombarded from all sides with all kinds of information now.
Absolutely.
That we need to hone that focus, you know, to what's really important, as opposed to just, as you said, just don't let anybody, you know, just anybody. You can't be emotionally driven, like you said. Yeah. And I got to say, in my naivete and in my early years, I was like, it was Carrie who said, I believe people told the truth because I did. So
Right.
I understand that totally, because that's where I came from. I have come from, and I still catch myself moving in those ways, and then I guess maybe that's discernment now, because I'm starting to learn that it can't be all that way. It's just not that way now, and you can't assume that everybody's reference experience is the same as mine. So yeah.
I don't know why my picture froze. I was pushing buttons and my I don't know what's going on. I'm just gonna leave it alone. Zoom, you can see me. Everybody else, you got a frozen picture of me. I think. I don't know what's going on. Well, I was pushing a button and I don't know what happened.
Anyway, I don't have enough coherently to speak of at the moment. I'm just like overwhelmed by what God is downloading for me. So yeah. Thanks. Bye.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts. Anyone else?
Well, I was just going to say it.
What's that?
I was just going to say, I think what people need to understand about the nature of authority is that it's functional and more than it's positional. But you can have somebody who's in a position of authority, and just because they abuse that authority doesn't cancel the authority. If someone is like, say, a bad judge or a bad cop, they still serve in that function. And I think that's kind of what goes on here, is that, a person is called to the office of prophet, but that doesn't make them exempt from doing a crappy job or using their position for their own gain, like we saw in Balaam and Balak, and so I know it's confusing to some people, but it might help them if they just realize that just because somebody serves in a position doesn't mean that they serve well. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of came out in the devotional. And you can really do damage. It's pretty frightening, especially when you look at the church model. I think a lot about all the Bible college kids and all the ministry that they're put into, and pulpits and all that stuff. And it's like Pizza Pops, because he can't cook himself a meal, should be steering the ship to eternity. It's kind of ridiculous, but and you put these young people, not looking down on them because they're young, but you put these young people in these incredible positions, and you see the damage done, and both ways too. I think I have definitely seen elders and deacons and power families in churches come alongside and try and groom young ministers in the ways that they want them to go and be and do, and even act against different families, rival families in the congregation, blah, blah, blah.
So weird.
It really is. And it has a lot to do with that whole carnal Christian thing. Because, the church is their playground, and especially if, they don't have a whole lot going on elsewhere in their lives, it just gets really super weird. So I think, you have to remember that. But then there's also the thing I struggle with sometimes too, is like, how do people learn? When you're navigating your gifts, when you're developing a prophetic gifting, it's so important to have that relationship, the subordination, but then also, it gets to me like, because I've never been in that position where, how do we get a person to start practicing their gifts, exercising them when they aren't quite ready? You know, because you don't just wake up one day and you're totally ready. Maybe you do. You know, the Spirit works in different ways, but you know, and people practicing discernment, I try to tell people it's practicing discernment, and you know, it's not acing discernment. It's not nailing it every time right out of the gate. I think that the passage in Hebrews talks, Hebrews 5:12, 5:14, talks about how you have to be constantly practicing your discernment, and
Right.
so you got to have some grace there, but it's just so much better if you're supervised.
Yeah. Well, you've heard about Noah and Shem had a discipleship training school in the desert. That's what a lot of
Yeah.
people believe. And that Abram was actually in that school. Because you have to wonder, how
Yeah.
did Abraham, at the age of 50 or 60, hear the word of God, hear the voice of God, and know that it was him? Especially
Correct.
when he comes from a Gentile family in Kuwait. His dad's an idol maker. Well, it's suggested, and Jubilee suggests this, that he was at that school, that discipleship training school, with Shem and Noah. And it's just, you're being trained. I mean, we see the model that Jesus had with his disciples and how they duplicated that model. Discipleship is everything. You have to be able to practice, flex your prophetic, your spiritual discernment, your giftings in a safe place, and make the mistakes, you know, whether it's the gift of healing or whatever. And you're not unleashed into public unless, you know, until you got it going on.
Yeah.
But there is the capability of error, which is why Paul says, you know, we hear and see in part. And, you know, even he, like that good example of him wanting to go to, I think, where was it? Huh? Where did he want to go? And the Holy Spirit resisted him. And then he was supposed to go somewhere else.
Macedonia and
Yeah.
Asia.
Right. And that was like on 2 or 3 occasions. I think 2 times he was resisted. On the third one, he realized, oh, I'm not supposed to go left. I'm supposed to go right. So, I mean, it's just flexing that muscle, getting that understanding. It takes time, you know, and yeah.
Yeah, he tried to sneak in through Bithynia once, which I thought was kind of funny. But, you know, and I think brings up a good point, is that there's a certain earnestness there where people want to do good things.
Sure.
But that you got to always be careful to yield to the Spirit. And I think there's protocols, like especially with the prophetic, there are protocols for delivering the word. And you need to, if it's in a congregational setting, you need to take that word to the leadership,
Right.
most of the time, and have it tested and have the okay
Absolutely.
given to deliver it. And so a lot of that's just, how do you do that if you're not in relationship with somebody? This whole thing is set up to be interdependent, to serve the body, and yet you have all these lone rangers.
Yeah.
I know the first time I encountered a guy who called himself a prophet, he didn't belong to any congregation. He just showed up at different congregations
Nope.
around town and touted himself. And
No way.
and he was he was a weird dude. He was a really weird dude.
Unacceptable.
Yeah, and that's why people don't understand. You know, you got all these Lone Ranger prophets that show up in chat rooms on live streams and on like Rude Awakening and stuff, and it's like, dude, no, that is not the biblical design.
No, that's not how it's done. And again, a lot of these people want to do it because they want the limelight. They want to be public figures or whatever. It's like, it's bizarre. You know, when it comes to my music, that's different. I'm a singer. I sing in a band, blah, 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 or I'm a songwriter. That's one thing. This is an entirely different thing. You know, and we're not nearly as big as a Rude Awakening Ministries. And God knows what he's doing there. I mean, I'm not worried about it. It's not You know what I'm saying? It's not a thing. I'll be more worried about how many records I sell than how many books I sell. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because in my reality,
Absolutely.
they're two different, even though they might not be, I think they're two different realities. I think singing a song and making an album is it's less significant, in my opinion, than expounding on the Word of God and training people on these matters. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
This, what we're doing here, this scares the crap out of me. Sing a song? Oh man, I'll pose all day long. Oh my gosh. And by the way, we ordered another run of Feast books. We should be getting them this week. A new printer. I'm always excited about new product. It's the same book, obviously, but you know, we went through it and we're always trying to revise and, you know, make better. No content has changed. No content has changed. So, yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. And thanks for sharing, everybody. I'm frozen for YouTube and Facebook are seeing a frozen picture of me. I pushed a monitor button and I don't know why it froze, but I'm not going to touch anything and try to fix it. Did you want to share something?
Yeah, real quick. Can we cancel the order of Feast books we just made so we can get the new ones? I'm just kidding.
When did you make that order?
About 5 days ago. It's already in the mail.
It's probably already on its way.
I'm just being a smart aleck.
Okay.
I'll get the new ones in Utah.
Hey, but we'll have it at the conference. Oh my gosh. It's a nice picture of you, Alan. Thank you, Nathalie. I'm not right. I could have asked Safrain. She's been my daughter Safrain has been transcribing 2-minute warnings, and so she uses the video and all that, and she'll send me screenshots of me doing these horrific faces. Like she'll do a screen grab of me going or something crazy, right? So thankfully, what YouTube and Facebook are seeing is at least a pleasant picture of me, as Nathalie was so kind to share with us, versus some weird, half my face is over here and the other one's over there type of thing. Yeah. Oh, man. Nothing is so cruel as daughters. They're so mean to you sometimes. All right. Hey, have a great evening. I think we just finished day 9 of the Omer count, which goes in tomorrow will be day 10. So yeah, we're doing the whole Omer. We're in the middle of the Omer count. Exciting. So we are like almost 40 days away from the conference, or less, because it starts on Thursday. Whoa. We're going to be seeing some of your asses real soon, and we're very excited about. Can I say that? That's not good, right? I bet you there's people that don't watch this because I say stuff like that. But anyway, we will be seeing some of your faces. See, that's what a normal guy would say. Real soon, and we're very excited about it. I don't know if you can tell, we're very excited about it. We had a great time last year. We're going to have a great time this year. If you are not coming because of the deadline, please reach out to Safrain or Alyssa. Safrain's been running it. So Safrain at chameleonchurch.com, and let her know, and she'll get you in. She'll get you in under the wire. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for hanging out. Shalom. Like Nathalie says, shalom to everybody. Yes.
Brilliance of gemstone unites with a rainbow and beckons me home. Endless procession
The views and opinions expressed during our broadcasts are solely those of the broadcast producers, hosts, and/or guests, etc., and are not necessarily the views or opinions of the Travelog Network, its sponsors, or affiliates.